Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Yonit Arthur. I'm an audiologist and coach. You are on the Steady Coach. Today, I'm going to be answering the question of whether you should bother to watch any of my stuff if there actually is a medical condition that seems to explain your chronic dizziness, chronic visual, chronic vestibular, like rocking, bobbing, swaying, or other kinds of symptoms. So I talk a lot on my channel about medically unexplained dizziness. I reference that in almost every video. And it is completely fair that those of you who do have some kind of medical condition that maybe you have been told are causing symptoms are wondering if there is hope for you at all, if any of these techniques might help you, if you should bother to invest the time in the free course. Totally a fair question. That's what we're here to answer today. Before I get into it, this is an unedited video. This is part of the Ask Dr. Yo series. I have an entire playlist of these videos, so if you have questions, chances are I have answered your question, so check out that playlist in the video description. Now, before we get into a little bit more of the specifics, I also want to say this. Those of you who have a diagnosis that's vestibular, that's medical, chances are I have already addressed your specific issue as well. If you have weakness in one ear or hypofunction, if you had vestibular neuritis or labyrinthitis, I have a video specifically about that. Meniere's disease, bilateral hypofunction, third window syndrome, BPPV, all of those I have specific videos just for you in which I explain exactly how to apply the techniques I talk about on my channel in light of those diagnoses. So please check out those videos. I will also link those in the video description. If you don't see a video description, just check out the video title underneath me right now, and there will be a little button that says more. If you click there, it'll show you all the videos. Okay, so this video is aimed a little bit more toward those of you who have other diagnoses, maybe some of them systemic or more serious diagnoses. And again, you're wondering, is this stuff even for me? Can this even help me? I've seen people who've had brain tumors or brain surgery, or who have other anomalies that might explain, have a neurological explanation for their dizziness, neurodegenerative disorders like multiple sclerosis, etc. So I'm speaking to you out there who have those diagnoses or who have some other medical explanation for your symptoms. Okay. So again, I know this is very confusing, and I know that it may seem on the surface like none of the things I talk about apply to you, especially since I constantly use that phrase medically unexplained, and you're like, okay, obviously medically explained, I don't belong here. Hang in there. It is actually not so cut and dry. So we're going to back up to the basics for a second here, and I'm just going to say this loud and clear. All symptoms are bio-psychosocial, meaning they are both driven by biological causes and affected by psychosocial causes. And I'm going to explain more about this in a moment. But it is an absolute false paradigm that is used in Western culture that separates the mind from the body. All symptoms, regardless of what their origin is, whether they're biological or whether they were caused by some kind of psychosocial thing like a panic attack or some period of stress. It doesn't matter initially what set it off. The way that your brain understands and interprets body sensations is always affected by other things, by things other than your biology or the strict biomedical explanations that doctors typically will give you. So let's get into a little bit more of this. So many of you have probably actually heard me tell this story, but this is just a beautiful illustration of this. So the story goes like this, and this was actually published in a medical journal. So there was a guy who was using a nail gun, and at one point during this construction project, he slipped, didn't think anything of it, and a few days later had a toothache. So he went to the dentist, they took x-rays, and they found a nail had gone through his jaw. Okay? So the point here is he didn't register that the nail had gone in. His brain didn't register danger had happened. It did not signal pain, despite there actually being tissue damage and an actual physical injury that was caused by the nail. So some of you out there may indeed have something that explains the origin of your symptoms and maybe even explains why your symptoms are ongoing to an extent. But the way that your brain interprets those symptoms is adaptable. It's changeable. This is a process that you may have heard me refer to on my channel as sensitization. So when your brain is dealing with a lot of stress, when you are having difficulties in your life, when you've dealt with trauma, when you don't have a great relationship with yourself, your system is much more sensitized to danger. And it means it's much more likely to interpret information that is biological in a threatening way. So say you actually do have something wrong with you that starts or maybe even keeps symptoms going. What your brain actually does with that information is going to be influenced by all of these other factors. And these other factors are the topic of my channel. So when you work on the other factors, you're much more likely to have a brain that will be less prone to interpreting biological information as a threat, which means you will be less likely to have symptoms or the severity of symptoms that you might have right now. Okay, so I want to be clear about something before we go into some of my recommendations for you. I've been accused recently of claiming that symptoms are all in your head and that this is somehow downplaying people's experiences. Yes, I am saying that all symptoms are in your head. All symptoms, not just PPPD, not just MDDS, not just vestibular migraine. If you have a gash in your arm, your symptoms are still in your head. It is your brain that is feeling pain, not your arm. Your brain interprets and is the arbiter of all truth. What your brain decides is what you're going to experience. So yes, all experiences are in your head. And if you can work on what's going on in your head, you have the capacity to influence symptoms, regardless of what the original cause is. All right, so I have some suggestions for you now, because the biggest gray area, I think, for those of you who have some kind of medical issue is how much is this going to help? Is this worth investing any time into? And again, I totally recognize and acknowledge that, but I don't think it's always as cut and dry biological as your medical professionals are sometimes making it seem or what you might have read about online. So let's get into that. Okay, so 4 things for you to know. The first thing for you to know and fully recognize is the biomedical bias of your medical providers and your healthcare providers. This is how doctors and other healthcare providers are trained. They are trained to see cause and effect in biomedical causes. So if they find some kind of biomedical explanation for symptoms, usually the buck stops there. They say, this is the cause, and this is what we need to work on. We need to treat this with medication or with surgery. And that's the end of the story. And it should never be the end of the story. All symptoms are biopsychosocial. Doctors actually know this. We've known this for a very long time. The problem is that doctors are trained, again, in that biomedical paradigm. They're more comfortable in the biomedical paradigm. And to be quite fair to them, patients are often not interested in taking control or taking charge of their symptoms in the way that looking at the psychosocial causes would require them to. So this is a problem on both ends, not just in the problem with the providers, but as someone who's watching this video, it seems to me like you're someone who might be willing to take charge of those psychosocial causes. So it's really helpful to communicate this to your physician. Not all physicians are going to be open to this, but many physicians will actually be quite open and accepting if you say something like, hey, I think psychosocial causes are playing a role in how severe my symptoms are. I'm going to pursue this. And I'm curious to know, first of all, if we're doing everything we can biomedically, and second of all, what you think the relative contribution of these various factors is to how I'm feeling right now, meaning how much is biologically based, how much is unavoidable biological problem, and how much might be psychosocial. And you might be surprised by what they say. I actually have an entire video that gives you the exact talk tracks that you can use with your doctor if you're not sure what to say. I'm going to link to that video in the video description. So again, it's about how to use doctor visits to actually get better rather than feel totally deflated and demoralized. So that's the first thing, biomedical bias. The second thing is recognizing financial biases. And I don't want to get conspiratorial, but this video would just not be complete without me talking about this. Even very well-meaning providers are often incentivized to provide you with treatments, and biomedical treatments are typically simpler to provide, may cost more money. Again, I'm not assuming perverse incentives here among providers necessarily, that they're trying to hurt you or trying to keep you sick. It's not that. It's just that naturally people are going to recommend what they have biases toward. So this isn't something that you should necessarily use to rule out someone who's trying to help you, but it's just worth asking the question, what is this person's incentive in providing me these particular biomedical services or biomedical explanations for what I have and what I might need to do to feel better? Okay, the third one is a little more complicated. You want to recognize emotional biases. So I think I alluded to this a little earlier in the video. Maybe I did. I don't remember. But I was talking, or at least in my head, I was talking about peers, other people who have conditions like yours. Some of them have an incentive to put it in your head that things cannot improve, that nothing that you can do is actually going to make things better. And that is because you getting better from doing those things challenges their own path. It challenges their own perspective on the illness that they have, the passive role they may be taking in it, the identity they may have built around it. And a lot of people just aren't interested in being challenged that way. If you are to get better, you shine a mirror in their face that basically says, hey, there's actually something you can do about this. And that threatens all of the things that I just mentioned. So I actually heard a story recently that just perfectly illustrates this. One of my clients with visual snow syndrome went on the visual snow syndrome subreddit and saw a success story there from a person who recovered from visual snow syndrome. And then a year later, this person posted a 1-year update like, hey, I'm still recovered and this is what I did. And apparently within 30 minutes, the post was taken down and the person was permanently banned from the subreddit for daring to say that someone can recover from visual snow syndrome. So that's visual snow syndrome, which I consider to be a purely neural circuit issue, but the same logic applies for those of you who might have some kind of physical or medical condition that is often leading to at least some of these dizziness symptoms that you're having. People can develop the same dysfunctional relationship with the idea of someone getting better, and that can threaten them. Okay, so then the last thing I want to say, and this is probably the most important, you need to get comfortable with being uncomfortably uncertain and realize that you're working on more than just symptom relief. Okay, so I guess 2 points in here, but they're both important. So first of all, I want to be clear, there is always gray area. Even people who have purely neural circuit symptoms are going to find something imperfect about their bodies if they look far enough. And I'm not trying to say that if you have some kind of traumatic brain injury that, it's the same as someone who has PPPD. But my point is we all live in imperfect bodies. There's always something wrong with us. Yes, to an extent, it's a matter of degree, but don't let anyone tell you that there's some actual boundary between where someone is going to definitely have chronic symptoms and where someone isn't. That boundary doesn't exist, meaning it's always possible, even if you have something medically wrong with you, that your brain can desensitize, can stop looking for danger, can stop amplifying or turning the volume up on symptoms, and you're going to feel better, even again, if there's something medically wrong with you. And there's uncertainty there, but you literally have nothing to lose. That is why I've made all this educational content free. You've got the YouTube channel, you've got the free course. You have nothing to lose by trying it out. Really, what have you got to lose besides time? So working on stress, working on your stress bucket, working on your relationship with yourself has multiple positive effects. It makes it much less likely that your brain is going to jump to dangerous conclusions, right? That cause symptoms to become more severe and more chronic. But also working on those things gives you power and agency back, and it helps you unravel an identity away from the symptoms. There is no, to me, greater ticket to a lot of suffering than becoming the illness with which you are dealing. You are more than that. And the more that you know that the illness is just something going on with you, it's not all of who you are, the less suffering you're going to experience. And that is actually a huge undertone in many of the videos that I have and in the free course as well. Learning not to build your identity around the symptoms is going to relieve you of a lot of suffering, even if for those of you with medical conditions that do explain your symptoms, that doesn't lead to as much of a drop in symptoms as it does for people who have medically unexplained symptoms. So all that to say, you should absolutely be using the tools here on my channel. Yes, your expectations may be a little bit different because there may be some component of your symptoms that's biologically driven to such an extent that no amount of desensitization of your nervous system is going to make it so that you're symptom free. But life can be dramatically, dramatically better than what it is today. I know that. So please use these tools. I'm giving them to you again for free so that you don't have to worry about them not working for you. Please, please, please take the free course and watch these videos. They will help you. Thank you for all of you tuning in. Thanks for listening. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. I'm running out of words today. And if you're listening to this as a podcast, if you could please follow the podcast or subscribe to it. You can also give us a 5-star rating. These things really help me reach more people, which of course is my purpose here. All right, everyone, take care. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.